Once we have repaired the organ of your psyche that had been affected by the trauma you were facing, what remains is to help you to cicatrize the wound. I am sure you have heard throughout your life that emotional wounds have to cicatrize. You have to give that wound time to heal. In general, an emotional injury usually takes between 4 to 10 years to fully recover, that without treatment. In cases where the person has already developed other disorders, either due to chronic mistreatment or because they repress what they felt, the healing process never occurs. And that is why people carry that wound throughout their lives, which causes them compulsions, pain, and bad life decisions without them realizing that this open wound is there affecting them. Now, thanks to the healing process, this cicatrization process occurs much more quickly, since we develop a psychic protection mantle that allows the person to close that wound in less time than they would do naturally. An open wound would be the case of the person who suffered infidelity and then relieves that trauma, the fear of infidelity, in all the people with whom he or she begins a relationship. Or someone who was abused in his childhood by one of his parents and in adulthood has many conflicts with other adults who remind him of that parental abuse. These people tend to become very despotic towards others. Note that here we are talking about someone who has not healed from that wound that he has been carrying for a long time. And therefore, what we need here is to close your psyche to any external intervention. That's why I usually talk about a mantle or a layer of protection which prevents ideas or thoughts that hurt you from coming back to harm you. Which is what we are going to do next, so that you begin to close that emotional wound that you are carrying. So, I want you to think for a moment about the situations that causes you the most harm. We are not working to delve into your unconscious here, so don't worry. I just want you to automatically think about what is bothering you today. It could be the fact that your partner abandoned you. It could be the fact that he was cheating to you. And if it doesn't relate to your partner, it could be that one of your friends or co-workers betrayed you in some way. The possibilities are endless. But as you can see, just with this subliminal neuroinduction question, I have already brought to light the open wound in you, which is the first phase of this procedure. That open wound, which is activated from time to time, is what, as I mentioned, generates compulsions that in turn provoke emotions and decisions that affect your life. Think about what happens to the person who suffered in his childhood because his father was cheating to his mother. It is something that he denies, that he represses, but that in any case is an open wound that that person carries with him all the time and that influences the way in which that person chooses his potential partners. One of my clients couldn't help but test all his potential partners, and that's why his partners always end up with her, because they were bored of this person. What was the problem? That she lived in a constant state of paranoia, which was caused by the fear she felt that her present partner might cheat on her, as her father had done in the past with her mother. If I tell you this, it is so that you can clearly see how an open wound affects each of the decisions you make in your life. That's why it was so important that you learn to recognize the wounds you have opened. Then, we are here as the first step in the part in which we had endorsed the thought through which you brought to light the wound that you have opened. Your girlfriend left you, your friend betrayed you. For example, I had the case of a client who lost a lot of money because of a girlfriend he had in the past who scammed him. And that's why the next thing I want you to think about is what is really bothering you, what you had to face at the time you suffered the injury. In the case of this client I am talking to you about, his wound was related to the anger he felt for not having realized the betrayal, and because in practice, at the present, he felt very foolish for having trusted someone who always gave him signs that she was going to scam him. So, thanks to these two questions, we already know what is really bothering you. And this leads me to the next question. What did you deserve to suffer? And I don't ask you this to activate guilt, nor to judge you, but so that you realize that even in the midst of all this suffering that you experienced, loss can also be transformed into gain. For example, in the case of my client who spent a lot of money, he indicated to me that he realized that he deserved to lose that money, which was like hitting rock bottom, that he needed to understand that pain in order to realize what the women he interacted with were like, and above all, what he was like in his interaction with other people. So I rephrase the question and want you to think about what kind of pain you needed to acquire through this experience in order to mature and become a better person than you are today. And finally, now I want you to think about what you learned through this whole process. You will notice that in my client's case, he learned that he should not mix money with love. And in fact, he did it so efficiently that he never was scammed by a girlfriend again. Therefore, it was something for which he should be congratulated. He did not need to continue martyring himself for having suffered. Therefore, if you have followed this procedure correctly, I am sure that you have already begun to close that emotional wound that you carried for so long. In fact, you will notice that this series of questions and their dynamics can be used with all the wounds that you still have open. Now we only have to regenerate your psyche as the final part of this healing process that we are working on here. So I'll see you in the next section.